of our New Year's challenge here. So here we go. So hydration, right? Got to do it. But hydration's all about how is it going to fit into your life. And here are some concepts that you need to think about. I want you to start thinking about your hydration no different than you think about the fuel in your car. All right? So Tracy, if you have a 3-hour drive ahead of you, you know you have X amount of fuel that you need in your car, right?
Right.
And it's irrelevant if you plan on driving fast or if you plan on driving slow. You just need X amount of fuel to get through X amount of time, right?
Right.
I want you to think of your hydration in that way. Every day when you wake up, you have, say, 24-hour trip that you're going to take, right? And whether you're running or whether you're sitting on your butt, your body still requires you to hydrate consistently. So what happens with most of us is we will go through our day and then get to some point where we go, oh my God, I haven't had anything to drink all day. And what do you do in that moment, right? You drink as much water as you possibly can drink in that short period of time. Then you go back to life, right? And then at some other magic point in the day you go, I haven't had anything to drink all day, right? And then what happens, right? So with your hydration, the magic number I want you to think about is 4 ounces an hour. All right. So the homework assignment for day 8 was hydrate like you're doing something. And again, whether you're out mountain biking or sitting on your butt at a desk, your body still requires 4 ounces an hour at least. All right. Now, where it gets interesting is how do you fit that into your individual lives, right? So we were just talking for Beth. It's having maybe a 70-ounce container that she knows she needs to finish in X amount of time. For me, I live my life from hour to hour. I need to know that, hey, this is at least 4 to 6 ounces. I need to drink one of these every single hour. And then I know if I get to the end of my hour and there's still water in there, I know I got to try a little harder the next time, right? So what I want to also do is put a new perspective on water. Have you ever read this book? So it's called The Hidden Messages in Water. All right. Do I have everyone's permission to enter the world of the flaky?
Sure.
So Dr. Emoto, and some of you may have already seen this in a prior lecture, but basically Dr. Emoto wanted to see how your thoughts affected physical reality. So he would take a sample of water and he would direct an intention at it. I love you, water. I love you. He would freeze the water molecule and look under the crystalline structure under a very high-powered microscope. And it gets weirder and weirder as the story goes, right? You take a same sample of water and direct a different intention. I hate you. I hate you. Freeze the water molecule, look under the high-powered microscope, see what he saw. So, get this. This is what a water molecule looks like when you play it, the Mozart Symphony. This is what a water molecule looks like when you play it heavy metal music. You make me sick. And love and gratitude. So, just like we talk about how the octane of a fuel is important, the quality of your water is important too. Because remember, you're 75% water, right? Right? So, and the things that we say to ourselves are sometimes worse than any of the things we would say to another human being, right? Yeah. So I just want you to look at water in a different light. So I know this story is strange. I urge you all to read the book. You know, come to your own conclusions as whether Dr. Emoto had some, good research or crazy research. Hey, but
or something other than water in his water?
Maybe. So those are decisions that you're going to have to make on your own. But you know what? It does bring up the point of, hey, we're 75% water. You know what we think about does have a physical effect on us, right? Mm-hmm. So that was your work. That was your homework yesterday. So remember, your homework was to basically drink 4 ounces every hour. Set a stopwatch, set an alarm. Remind yourself to drink 4 ounces every single hour. Today, day 9, we're talking about inflammation. All right? What the heck is inflammation?
Oh.
What's that from inflammation, Tracy?
Well, it causes pain.
Causes pain?
And it's the
Swelling.
muscles are...
Swelling? Got swelling? Beth, is inflammation good or bad?
Usually bad, because it means there's something going on.
Usually bad.
It's telling your body you have to slow down.
Okay. But it could mean something's usually bad. That means we left room for it could be good. I like the way you're thinking. Right, so there are two types of inflammation, right? And basically there's acute inflammation, which is when you stub your toe, trip over something, and you injure something. In other words, when you sprain your ankle, it gets big and swollen, right? That is an example of acute inflammation. Is the body smart or stupid?
Smart.
Smart, right? So the body does things intelligently. So when we talk about, hey, is acute inflammation a good thing or a bad thing? It's actually a good thing because it's the start of the healing process, right? The body's self-corrective in nature, and it needs to get rid of the debris from the joint injury and things of that nature. It needs to start growing new blood vessels. It needs to start producing scar tissue, things of that nature. So acute inflammation, hey, although uncomfortable, is good, right? Chronic inflammation is basically, it's insidious. In other words, when we're talking about chronic inflammation, it's really, we're talking about cellular biology, right? Is the body smart or stupid?
Smart.
Right? So when you have inflammation, is it a good or bad thing? Or is it just maybe a reflection of the environment that you put your body in? Right? So get this. Inflammation results in heart disease, stroke, high cholesterol and blood pressure, brain diseases like Alzheimer's and senility, obesity, diabetes, cancer, joint pain, arthritis, allergies, eczema, acne, poor recovery, poor healing, poor immune system. All right? In other words, bad things result from inflammation. Right? So when we talk about chronic insidious inflammation, we're really talking basically about how your body is adapting. Right? Your body is designed to survive, right? So when you put it in an environment that is inappropriate, do you understand how the body's going to make changes? Mm-hmm. And maybe these diseases are a result of those changes. Right? So, raise your hand if you've heard of omega-6s. All right? Raise your hand if you've heard of omega-3s. Are these good or bad fats?
Good.
Is this one good and that one bad, or is that one bad and that one good? Are they both good?
Both good.
Right? It's a good question, right? But basically, what I want you to understand is, this is a picture of your cell, folks, right? And I want to take you back to high school biology. Remember how every cell has a wall, all right? Basically what we call a cell membrane, right? So that cell membrane, what do you think it's made out of? Water, right? Well, actually, it's made out of your essential omega-3s and your omega-6 acids. All right, I want you to think of this as a cell, okay? All right? In order for a cell to be healthy, it needs to be movable, it needs to be pliable. Think of these things as channels, all right? In other words, things need to get in, things need to get out. Your cells are always dying, aren't they? Right? So when you produce new cells, what do you make those with? You make those with the fatty acids that are available in your diet, all right? So get this, when our body goes to make new cells, right, it's making it out of those omega-6s and those omega-3s. Now, in an ideal situation, we would have a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6s, commonly known as the bad fat, and your omega-3s. All right? If these were in balance, the cell is going to be healthy. You are going to be healthy because you are just the end result of 60 trillion cells, right? So get this, folks. Omega-6s are found in everything. That's found in your soy. That's found in your wheat. All right? That's found in pretty much most of the things that most of us eat most of the time. All right? Omega-6s can be converted to something called arachidonic acid. All right? And arachidonic acid can be converted to prostaglandin E2. You guys all knew that, right? All right? Prostaglandin E2 is inflammation. Right? So, anyone ever hear of COX-2 inhibitor or an anti-inflammatory? What does that do? It prevents your omega-6s from turning into arachidonic acid so that you don't get the end result, which is inflammation. Right? So, the good thing about your omega-3s are they have something in them called EPA, and what EPA does is it goes right here and prevents that from forming, which prevents that from happening. So you can skip the drugs and go right to the omega-3s. You find those in your avocados. You find those in your marine, like your fish. All right? So is EPA a good thing? Yeah. If EPA and D is in balance, in other words, your omega-3s and your omega-6s are in balance, does everyone see that you're not going to be inflamed? But if you have an abundance or a greater ratio of 6s to 3s, do you understand that you're going to be on this end of the equation? Right? So, your body needs EPA to fight inflammation, But it also has, good fish oil has something in it called DHA, which makes brain synapses. That's how your brain functions. It makes dopamine and serotonin. So those are important neurotransmitters for mood, right? So your best defense against being pro-inflammatory or being inflamed is really having omega-3s in balance with omega-6s. So, you know, symptoms of fatty acid imbalance are things like dry skin, dandruff, eczema, lowered immunity, dry eyes, poor wound healing, dry hair, frequent infections, all different types of things. Problems with the nails, allergies, cracked skin on the heels, things of that nature. It's going to affect your mucous membranes, okay? Now, again, we can have foods like, you know, fish, lean proteins, your olive oils, your green leafy vegetables, your cruciferous vegetables, cherries, blueberries, turmeric, ginger, garlic, green tea. Those are all things that are anti-inflammatory, but you're going to get your best results with a high-quality fish oil. Now, when you go to the store, and your homework for day 8 is going to be find a good quality fish oil. You can't, not from here, because guess what? That would be easy. I sell a very good one. All right? The reason why mine is so good is because the DHA in the EPA, the good stuff, is high. All right? So just like anything else, you look at your labels, right? We have total fat of 4 grams. 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals. So everything's accounted for. All right? If there's about half a gram or a gram missing in here, it's probably not something good, right? That makes sense? All right? When we go to our omega-3 fatty acids, all right, this number should be as high as possible, but specifically when we get to EPA and DHA, above 500. This product is given in a range. That's a good clue. In other words, you know when one of your kids is in trouble and you ask them a bunch of different questions, but they are, you know, that full disclosure is there versus then the, you know when you're getting like half the story and you know something's up. Yeah, this is a seasoned mother right there, right? So in other words, full disclosure is a good thing. All right, make sure they're above 500, and if they're given a range, that's a good sign. So on the bottom, there should be some sort of mention of a purification process, and it should come from anchovies, sardines, or herring, bottom of the food chain. If it says wild, that's fantastic. All right, if it's wild, typically your EPA and your DHA are going to be higher. So that's what you need, is a good quality fish oil product. All right, at some point in this series of workshops, we're going to talk about the most important vitamins to be taking, or if we should be taking vitamins at all. On the top of that list for every human being is an essential fatty acid. Not far behind it is a probiotic, which I believe we're talking about now.
Can we just ask you, where does flaxseed fit in that?
We'll get there in a bit. So, probiotics, all right? So let's talk about, what are probiotics? What do they do? Well, and why do I need them? So basically, what are probiotics? Anyone? Anyone? Probiotics.
Bacteria that helps fix the stomach.
Yeah, yeah. For your homework for this day, you're going to have a pretty cool cartoon that you're going to watch. All right? But basically, your probiotics are your body's natural bacteria. All right? In other words, they are basically formed, they develop as you develop. All right? Who breastfed their child? Right? Remember, you breastfeed your child, you pat them on the back, and then they spit up? That stuff that they spit up is actually food for your good bacteria. Ligosaccharides. Good luck spelling that. All right? But in other words, isn't that neat that within mother's milk there's actually food for the good bacteria? We're going to talk about how these bacteria do a number of things, but they're actually part of what we... Well, I don't want to ruin the video. All right? So, do you want to remind my wife that this is not doing what it used to do as far as the spyware goes? So, basically, what do your probiotics do? Well, they're really important for your metabolism. They help you absorb minerals and vitamins. They help you basically with the production of short-chain fatty acids, all right? And basically they help ferment or break down non-digestible carbohydrates and starches. Basically, they make your digestive system more efficient, all right? They help you pull more good stuff from the food that you eat. All right, so we've always known that different people have different types of bacteria in them. In other words, someone that is overweight has very similar bacteria to another person that's overweight, but they may have completely different bacteria than someone that's skinny. Does that make sense? All right, so basically after 12 weeks of taking probiotics, people lost weight. The group that didn't take probiotics didn't lose weight. So again, digestive system more efficient can help people with their weight loss. 3, hey, you remember our markers of inflammation we were just talking about? After 3 weeks, people that took probiotics had improvements in their C-reactive protein and their inflammatory cytokines. So probiotics and depression. So basically people that took probiotics had favorable changes in neurotransmitters called GABA. All right, and those were in regions associated with anxiety and depression. So your gut is a big part of how your body produces serotonin. There is you ever heard the expression trust your gut? All right, because there is a nerve called the 10th cranial nerve which actually controls your gut. All right, so there is some actual truth to trust your gut. All right. Well, why do you need probiotics? Well, there's a disruption in the natural colonization process. So in other words, how do you get your probiotics? Usually as you go through the mother's vagina during the birth canal, that's one thing. And then as you nurse, and then as you go through life, right, you get your good bacteria. We have more C-sections now. We have more formula feeding. And we have basically a society where people are afraid for their kids to get sick. In other words, you look at a kid in a third world country, where are they? On the ground, building their immune system, right? So, most people have had antibiotics, right? Raise your hand if you had an antibiotic. Great. You also destroyed your body's natural good bacteria, all right? So, research shows that you need to be taken after an antibiotic, take probiotics for at least 3 months to help a child establish normal gut flora, all right? Pasteurization products, all right? In other words, when we pasteurize something, what do? We heat it, right, to kill off the bad germs. But we also kill the good germs, too. All right? Also things like industrialized farming, things of that nature. In other words, the pesticides we use prevent the actual vegetables from taking up the bacteria. So there are a number of reasons why we need probiotics. So that's why it's a good thing to be taking them, for sure. So how do you find a good probiotic? Really, make it as simple as this. Right? When you look at the labels, there's 2 labels here, right? We got Lactobacillus acidophilus. We got Lactobacillus bulgaricus. In other words, see how this one has 4 different critters. See how this one has at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but at least 10, right? So as far as who has more critters, the one on the right. All right? And then we look at these units of CFUs, which are colony-forming units, right? Now this one right here has 3.2 billion colony-forming units, right? Now when we look over here, these are all 100 million, 100 million, 100 million, etc. All right? So how you find a good quality probiotic is, first and foremost, find the one that has the most amount of different critters. All right? Don't be afraid to change your products. In other words, I will go from a standard process product to another product called Innate Choice. Because they have different critters in them, my body may respond better to different critters. The research on this is just coming out, and a lot of it is funded by Dannon, so be careful. Hold that one, Beth. I'll get to all of them at the end. So first and foremost, who has the most critters is the first thing to ask. All right? And then the second thing to ask is, well, how many critters are there? All right? So the third thing you want to consider is the product that doesn't require refrigeration is typically the better one. Right? Because these bad boys have got to, you got to eat them, they got to go through the digestive system, and then they got to go into the intestines, right? So if it needs to be refrigerated, what does it tell you? Maybe the little weakling bacteria, right? You want tough bacteria, right? And then the fourth thing, once you have found your product, basically, don't eat it with food. All right. In other words, sometimes people eat their supplements with food, and that's a good idea. But basically, what happens when you eat food? The acidity of the stomach goes way up, right? What is that going to do to the little bacteria? You're melting me! You're melting me! Right? So, 4 things that will help you make sure you're getting your probiotics. What about what about yogurts, right? Yeah.
Right.
The most question is, yeah, well, what about yogurt? I $8 for this little thing of yogurt. If you look at the sugar content of most of those yogurts, really high. All right? And good bacteria, they don't like being in an environment of sugar. You're going to eat that, right? Most of that yogurt's pasteurized, right? Wait a second, what's that going to do to the good bacteria? So most of that stuff is really just good marketing. I think even Activa was recently sued or something.
What about plain yogurt?
Plain yogurt, plain Greek yogurt is great. Nothing wrong with that. Your naturally fermented foods, those are great, you know? I feel though, personally, my personal opinion is that you're better off just supplementing with a probiotic than, you know, getting them naturally. I mean, yes, if you can do the things that you need to do to get your probiotics naturally, God bless you. But,
Can you take it with other supplements?
yeah,
Okay,
sure.
well, you said
I
no, but
would, you know, in other words, I would take my probiotic at night, right before I go to bed. That's when I would take it. I would not take it in the morning, where I take the majority of my stuff where I've had some food. So, sitting. So now we're going to talk about sitting. Get this, folks. 18 studies have found that people who sat for the longest periods of time were twice as likely to have diabetes or heart disease. Those that spent 6 hours of sitting a day reduced their expectancy by 5 years. In other words, basically, we're now looking at sitting as almost like an independent risk factor for disease, right? The British Medical Journal estimates that the average person will sit for 30 years of your life. So you're going to sit for 30, you're going to sleep for 30, you know, have fun with that other, you know? So in other words, from a chiropractic perspective, folks, when you sit, basically, sitting to the spine's like sugar to the teeth. That's an expression in chiropractic. This is a study. They must have basically taken a college student, put a needle, electrode, and basically have the student do all these different positions. And what they found is, hey, when you go in from basically a standing to a sitting position, the pressure on the lower back, on the discs, almost doubles. Here's another chart that shows basically, hey, here's the strain on my spine when I lay on my back. But when I sit, it's way up here. All right? In other words, remember, folks, the spine has these curves when we look at it from the side, right? These curves, they function like a spring. What they do is they protect the discs, which act as bushings for the nerve. This nerve literally is sending the messages that runs your body. So when we sit, what happens to those curves is we lose those curves. Most importantly, we lose the curves in our neck. All right, our head tends to come forward, and we get something called forward head posture. I talked a little bit about this last week. For every inch that head comes forward, it's going to double the pressure at the base of the neck. People that have this are more likely to have, well, headaches, but also neck aches as well. All right. So when we talk about sitting strategies, that all starts from the tush up. All right. So basically, when you're sitting, you want the bump on the side of your hip to be above the bump on the side of the knee. The thigh should angle down by about 3 to 5 degrees. All right. That means that the SI joints are protected, and you have a nice curve in that low back. Right. Your feet should be contacting the surface of the floor. They have those things that you can put your feet up if you can't reach it. All right. 110 angle. In other words, the back of your chair at 110 degrees. The researchers found that that was the optimal angle for your chair to be in at 110 degrees. All right? And 50-10 rule. For every hour that you're sitting, get up for 10. Or the 25-5 rule. For every 25 minutes of sitting, get up for 5. In other words, that allows the body to nourish the discs. In other words, your body needs that movement to get pressure into the discs. Sit on an unstable surface or a Basu ball. All right? In other words, movement forces your body to nourish the discs. Sleeping. All right, so we're going to talk about getting to sleep first. Next week we're going to talk about how do you stay asleep. But when it comes to getting asleep, there's really 3 things. First is getting a sleep schedule. So if you're having a hard time getting to sleep, we all know that research is going to tell us that it's mostly because of something psychological. It's stress, right? And we're going to talk a lot about that next week. But basically, if we were to remove stress from the picture, which we can't do, but wouldn't it be great if we could? I'll give someone $100 to give me a bucket full of stress. First person that can fill this bucket or this cup with stress, I'll give you $100. You can't put your spouse in there, you can't put your boss in there. But does everyone get the fact that, hey, stress to you may be different than stress to you, and that it's all relative, and we all have stress. And what's different is just how we deal with it. You know, it's just a part of life. So for those of us that can't sleep, no naps after 3 o'clock. Hey, if you are napping, no longer than 20 minutes. All right, if you're having a hard time sleeping, you want your wake or your sleep time within 15 minutes. So for me, if I go to bed at 9:30, late to bed is 9:45, Early to bed is what? 9.
15.
You got it. But it's a half-hour window. All right? Now, keeping my wake time is consistent, even on the weekends. Yeah, I know. Hey, this is the science behind it. I didn't make this up. In other words, if you're having a hard time falling asleep, keep your wake time consistent on the weekends. Try to do it for at least 3 weeks. You'll be surprised. It makes a difference. Wake up naturally. So in other words, everyone, you're due to wake up at 6. 5:30, your body wakes you up. You go, this is the best half hour of my life, right? I'm going to get the best sleep. You wake up at 6 o'clock with the alarm, and you're like, oh, it was the truck that just hit me, right? What happens? It's like, so basically what happens is your body goes through these sleep cycles, and when you woke up at 5:30 all chipper, your body was ready to go. You made the conscious decision to go back to sleep. Your body released sleepy chemicals, so when your alarm wakes you up, they're out there floating. So that's the day that coffee ain't gonna do it, right? So whenever, if waking up, if you're one of those habitual snooze bars, I used to sleep through classes with that snooze bar. Oh, my roommate used to want to kill me. Yeah. But anyways, this was an undergraduate, not chiropractic school. But anyway, kill your snooze bar. Sleep routine, and the last thing we'll talk about is sleep environment. Finish eating and exercising at least 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. So your body temperature can stay elevated after you exercise, and guess what? Digestion is a physiological process that requires energy. So if you're digesting, your body ain't sleeping. Sorry. Bedroom should be cool and dark. We're talking at least 68, 70 degrees, and dark is the key. Yeah. So, or under. Hey, if you can go 60, hey, then God bless you. But basically, the dark is the key. How many people watch television before they go to bed? So, in other words, good Tracy. But in other words, going to bed with the television on, or like a bright obnoxious alarm clock, that's not going to be in your interest, because that will affect your pineal gland, which produces serotonin and melatonin. Right? So get that room as dark as possible. Try to get asleep before 10. In other words, there's something called REM, or deep stage sleep. That's the healing portion of sleep. In other words, you want to get 2 hours of REM before midnight. All right? You'll be in REM longer after midnight when you get there, but it's harder to get there for whatever reason. I don't know. Ask Cinderella. Wake up technology. They have all sorts of different technologies that wake you up with a light to the face, or with a gentle, little. There's certain things that kind of gauge your sleep, and they wake you up when you're coming out of a sleep cycle. There's all sorts of cool little gizmos for sleep. Don't be afraid to use those. Fitbit, I know, does something neat for it. So, yeah. In your sleep environment, so what I want you to think about with your sleep environment is that bedroom is for sleep, and you know what else. In other words, don't do your bills in there. Don't do your homework in there. Don't do office work in there. In other words, don't do anything in that bedroom other than sleep, and you know what else, all right? Keep your bedroom separate for those 2 things. Interval training, all right? So, when it comes to interval training, there's 2 ways of doing this. There's the heart rate-based workout, okay? In other words, you calculate your heart rate to be, your fat-burning zone. You stay in that heart rate, and life is supposed to be good, all right? So with interval training, that's completely different. All right, basically, interval training is when you would walk a minute and then run a minute, or walk a minute and run 2 minutes. In other words, you're alternating your intensity. All right, guys, from a biochemical perspective, you're teaching your body, I got to get energy over here. I got to get energy from over here. Oh, I got none of that stuff left, so I got to go somewhere else. In other words, biochemically, it does some really, really, really good things. It also saves time. It also is reducing some of the strain on your joints. But here's the big thing. We know that basically, this chart right here is called EPOC. And basically what it describes is the higher intensity your workout, the longer your metabolism is going to be elevated afterwards. So when you do what we call steady state training, in other words, you calculate your heart rate based off of your goals, and you get on the treadmill, usually with the Cosmo or something else, and you go... That's steady state training. You're not altering your intensity at all. Your intensity doesn't go up as high, so your metabolism isn't extended for as long. Right? So the key